Who do you love?
The Lord. I do. I'm so humbled and so thankful by His grace and His goodness, and for never giving up on me. And I just remember praying, if you give me one day of strength, I will go out that door and I will not look back. And that one day came, and I left.
Do you now know your own strength?
I know from whence my help cometh. I do know that. And I know that is strong within me. And if ever I get low, or I get weak, I know where I can turn to.
The news about Whitney Houston is crackling through the music world, and the news is good. Her mother is singer Synes Houston, but at age 21, Whitney Houston is blazing her own trail with style and sizzle.
Ooh. Best pop female vocalist.
Yeah.
You must have been pretty excited about that, huh?
Yes, I am, very.
What was going through your mind the moment your name was read out?
It's the most successful debut solo album in history.
She's quickly becoming the new queen of pop.
Crowned the prom queen of soul.
It'll take an act of Congress to keep this woman from becoming a megastar.
Whitney Elizabeth Houston was born on the 9th of August 1963 in Newark, New Jersey, at a time when African Americans were fighting for the civil rights movement. She was born to Emily Sissy Houston and John Russell Houston Jr. Sissy is a Grammy-winning gospel and soul singer who was a member of the Drinkard Singers before becoming a solo artist. John was a former army serviceman who later became an administrator under the New York mayor. Whitney was given the nickname Nippy by her father. Whitney came from a very musical family. Through Sissy, Whitney was a cousin of singers Dion and Dee Dee Warwick, as well as a distant cousin of opera singer Linton Price. Aretha Franklin became an honorary aunt, while Darlene Love was Whitney's godmother. The family later relocated to a suburban area of East Orange, 3 years following the Newark race riots of 1967. Whitney was raised in the Baptist faith by her parents and joined the church choir of the New Hope Baptist Church in Newark at age 5, where she also learned how to play the piano. She later recalled being exposed to the Pentecostal church nearby as well. Whitney made her solo performance debut at New Hope, singing the hymn "Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah." When Whitney became a teenager, she told her mother that she wanted to pursue a career in music. Throughout her teenage years, she would be taught how to sing by Sissy. Sissy Houston went solo, and her career didn't turn out the way she wanted it. She began to live her dreams through Whitney. Her mother was the disciplinarian when it came to training Whitney. She was tough on her. When she was a teenager, Whitney's parents divorced because Sissy Houston had an affair with the church minister. Ooh, Lord have mercy. Not them being messy in the church. This broke Whitney's heart as she saw the church as a second home. And those acts of infidelity caused her to resent her mother for a while, to the point that as soon as she turned 18, she moved out of the house without even telling her mother where she moved to. This is where Whitney would meet Robin Crawford, while working a summer job. Robin was Whitney's BFF, and the two would eventually become roommates. Whitney and Robin hung out every day. However, their friendship would later prove problematic years down the line. I'll circle back to their relationship later. During this time, Whitney started modeling for Cosmopolitan and Glamour, but her real passion lied in singing. After some time passed, Whitney cooled off and was able to somewhat repair her relationship with her mother, when one night at Sissy Houston's gig, the singer pretended to have a sore throat. For this reason, she went backstage and told Whitney that she could not sing, so she should go and sing in her place. Unbeknownst to Whitney, this was just a trick to get Whitney on stage to see how she would perform in front of a crowd that's not full of churchgoers. She received a standing ovation, and her parents were now convinced that Whitney was seriously ready to start a career in the music business. After blowing the roof off at Sissy Houston's gig, the Houston family began shopping around for a record deal for Whitney. The two labels with relatively good deals were from Elektra, run by Bruce Longville, and Arista, run by Clive Davis. The two men would get into a bidding war to sign the young Whitney. After Clive Davis witnessed Whitney performing at a nightclub called the Sweetwaters, he was so impressed he continued to chase the Houstons with a record deal, even increasing the figure of the deal. When the deal was just right, Whitney eventually signed with Arista on April 10, 1983. Since she was only 19, her parents also signed for her. 2 weeks later, on April 29th, Whitney performed on the Merv Griffin Show after an introduction from Davis.
There was Lena Horne, there's Dionne Warwick, but if the mantle is to pass to somebody who's 19, who's elegant, who's sensuous, who's innocent, who's got an incredible range of talent, but guts and soul at the same time, it will be Whitney Houston, in my opinion.
She also happens to be a model.
Yes, she is. She's a beautiful girl, and her poise doesn't hurt. But it's her natural charm. I mean, you either got it or you don't have it. She's got it.
She got it. Wait till you hear her. Here's Whitney Houston.
A world full of love, like yours, like mine, like
Whitney did not begin working on the album immediately. The label and Clive wanted to ensure that they had the right material and producers for Whitney's debut album. After nearly 2 years of sessions, Whitney Houston was released on February 14, 1985, on Valentine's Day. The album would spend more than 3 years on the Billboard 200 and shot up at number 1 on the chart in March of 1986. The album would spend more than 3 years on the Billboard 200 and shot up at number 1 on the chart in March of 1986, over a year after its release, where it would stay for 14 weeks. The album would hit number 1 and was certified diamond in the US for sales of 14 million copies. As of now, the album has reportedly sold more than 25 million copies worldwide. It had 3 number 1 singles, Saving All My Love For You, How Will I Know, and Greatest Love of All. The album would receive 4 Grammy Award nominations, including 3 at the 1986 ceremony, including Album of the Year, winning 1 in the Best Female Pop Vocal Performance category for Saving All My Love For You. As her buzz began to grow, Whitney brought Robin along with her, causing Robin to drop out of school and become Whitney's personal assistant. This caused issues for Whitney's family, as they did not like Robin and was ostracized from Houston's family and management as they felt like she was a bad influence on Whitney. Robin is a lesbian, and her close relationship with Whitney raised a few eyebrows in the public eye, with magazines and interviewers pushing those rumors out. According to close friends and family, Robin was one of the few people that Whitney listened to, so the family felt like they couldn't control Whitney as much with her around. Whitney's family was old school, okay? A Christian family. They did not get down with the gay stuff, so they wanted Robin out of Whitney's life. It was even rumored that Whitney's father wanted to offer someone $6,000 to break Robin's legs. Like, that's mad, that's crazy. We thank God that never happened. The family couldn't get rid of Robin just yet, so they tolerated her for now. By late 1985, still riding high off the success of her debut album, Whitney began to gear up for her first world tour, the Greatest Love World Tour, which was to kick off in July of 1986 until the end of that year, spanning across 50 dates. The tour started in North America during the summer of 1986 before heading to Europe, Japan, Australia, and then back to the USA for a final show in Hawaii during the fall. The tour was a success, grossing $5 million in the North American leg of the tour alone. As the success grew, the Houston family became tighter, with Whitney employing her brother Michael as a road manager, mailing him a check of $200 weekly. Whitney would also employ her other half-brother Gary, a former NBA player for the Denver Nuggets, whose career got cut short after failing a drug test. And the plot thickens. Gary became a background singer for Whitney on tour. You can imagine the pain he must have been feeling. He went from having a career in the NBA to singing background for his younger half-sister. I know he was burning inside. This life will humble you, boy. But that's kinda his fault for taking drugs. But I digress. Unfortunately, the riches and the success also began getting to Michael's head, as he also began taking hard drugs, from moving common weed to cocaine. With Whitney being very close to Michael, she would unfortunately follow in her brother's footsteps, as according to him, she would want to try certain things after he tried them first. And there you have it, Whitney got hooked into drugs as a result of having a bunch of enablers around her. It didn't really help that her older brothers, the ones that she looked up to, introduced her to drugs. For the longest time there was a misconception surrounding this topic, where people believed that her ex-husband Bobby Brown was the one who introduced her to drugs, when Whitney actually started abusing drugs way before they even met. In 1985, Whitney was 22 and Bobby was 16, still chilling with New Edition. The two hadn't even crossed paths at this point. So I'm glad that finally Michael came out clean on Oprah years later about this topic, finally admitting that he was the one that introduced Whitney to the white stuff.
I feel responsible for it, always have, always. And I just felt like I should have taken better care of her.
So here's the big question, Michael. Did you introduce her to drugs?
I would say, yeah. We did everything together, so once I was into that, and she followed suit.
You also have to remember that this is 1985. I wasn't even alive then, but history tells us that the 80s were the coke decade. It was the new drug of choice at the time for the rich. Everybody was doing it, out in the open, at parties. It was a really common thing.
It's only a bit of snow. It's 1984, darling. Everyone is on cocaine.
Yeah, what Rennie said. If you know, you know. Though Whitney was always into her faith, the demons in the music industry started to affect her. The parties, the drugs, etc. That's why it's very important to remain grounded in your faith as you enter the entertainment business, because if your faith is weak, it can easily get you entangled in its web and lead you down the path of destruction. I'm not saying the music industry itself is bad, but you just have to watch out for the vultures in it and remain true to who you are. Whew. Pastor Drae is preaching. Let me get back on track. On the 2nd of June 1987, Whitney released her second album, Whitney. Whitney is one of the best-selling albums of all time, with sales of over 30 million copies worldwide. The album features 5 top 10 hits on the US Billboard Hot 100, which also became international hits. The album's first 4 singles, I Wanna Dance With Somebody, Didn't We Almost Have It All, So Emotional, and Where Do Broken Hearts Go, all peaked at number 1 on the US Hot 100, making her the first female act to achieve 4 number 1 hits from one single album. Along with 3 straight number 1 singles from Whitney's previous album, this gave the singer an unprecedented 7 consecutive number 1 hits, surpassing the Beatles and the Bee Gees, who each had 6 number 1 consecutive hits. Wow. The album and its first single, I Wanna Dance With Somebody, were hits worldwide, peaking at number 1 in the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and several other countries throughout Europe. It also became a major hit in various other countries in Asia, South America, and Africa. Whitney's stardom would grow even bigger at this point, solidifying herself in the pop genre. But as this happened, the black community would kinda turn its back on Whitney, as they believe she's sold out by singing quote-unquote pop white people music. Especially after Whitney was so hard on people like Janet Jackson and Paula Abdul for having an image just to sell records. Flashback time.
kind of make you wonder how a song like Things That Make You Go, could be a hit, huh?
Well, you know, I know what's hot. You know, people are fickle, they go for what's new and it's hot. What they think is today, and next week it'll be something
Right,
else.
and that's what you gotta do is stick with what you know is good for you.
Right.
And never mind all that other shit, Janet Jackson shit, let the bitch have it.
This we're gonna have to edit.
Now, wait a minute.
Oh, why you
Wait, let me let y'all know who that was. First of all, you gotta...
Get out of here, bro.
Sissy Houston talking, folks. Been in this business for over 30 years.
That's right.
Paula Abdul ain't shit now. One thing, Paula Abdul ain't shit. Mommy, that girl is singing off key on the record.
Yeah, but the people are buying it, right?
Because she got a image that we all know ain't really true. I don't want to be in the business that ain't true. I don't want to be in it like that.
Honey, it can't change you. You have to remain.
I know, Mom, I know. I know, Mom, I know. And I'm not gonna cheat. I'm not gonna do it. I will not sell out.
Now, me personally, I don't see the big deal with any of this. Like, I don't feel like Whitney sold out. She was singing with soul, with that heavenly voice of hers. That was just black vocalists written all over her songs. So I don't see why the black community went so hard at her. Even Al Sharpton wanted to boycott Whitney and started calling her Whitney Houston. Like, bruh, we be our own worst enemies at times. We be our own people. It's crazy out here. Whitney would witness the frustration from the black community firsthand at the 1989 Soul Train Awards. When Whitney's name was called for a nomination, a few people in the audience booed her. That really bothered Whitney, but someone who was also present at the event would cheer her up and impact her life in ways that she never expected in a million years. After being voted out of New Edition in 1985, Bobby embarked on his solo career and became huge after releasing his second album, Don't Be Cruel, in 1988. That night, at the 1989 Soul Train Awards, would be the first time the two would meet. Bobby recalls that when he was sitting in the crowd, Whitney was in the seat behind him and kept bumping into him on purpose. When he turned around to ask her, "You know you keep bumping into me, right?" She replied, "I know." It was clear that she was just trying to get his attention because, you know, he was that guy at the time. Later that night, after Whitney was booed in the audience for a nomination, Bobby told her to ignore all of that and that she's a great artist. Bobby would further impress Whitney when later on that night he would take to the stage and give an electrifying performance of his hit single My Prerogative. You can tell Whitney was feeling this guy. Just look at how hard she was cheesing. Jeez. I know Robin was mad. I know she was jealous. Anyway, by the end of the night, Bobby would ask her out and Whitney accepted. And the two started going out to dinner the next day. The love between the two was really intense. Like, they really loved each other. But unfortunately, the public criticized their relationship as they felt that Whitney was too good for Bobby because she had this classy, good girl, sophisticated image, while he was known as the bad boy of R&B, the wild one from the hood. But what people did not know was that Whitney herself was from the hood. She was born in New Jersey. The label just made up this image of hers just to sell records. Bobby and Whitney had a lot of fun together. They were soulmates for sure. But just because you love someone doesn't mean that they're the right person for you. You'll see what I mean in a sec. After 3 years of courtship, the two would get married at her New Jersey mansion in July of 1992. Even though it was a beautiful wedding, this day would be the start of a tumultuous, fiery and passionate marriage. Years after Whitney's passing, Bobby claimed that the first time he actually saw Whitney doing coke was on their wedding day.
You broke tradition a little bit and saw her before the wedding.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was the first time I had actually saw her do drugs.
Cocaine.
Yes, ma'am.
Bobby says in his upcoming book, Every Little Step, he found his bride-to-be, quote, hunched over a bureau, snorting a line of coke. He says she offered him a hit, but he didn't indulge at that moment.
What went through your mind when you saw that?
The drugs wasn't her. She did drugs, but the drugs didn't do her.
And 1992 was a big year for Whitney. Her career was booming. Her stardom was further elevated by the massive success of her film The Bodyguard, starring alongside Kevin Costner. The soundtrack single from the movie, I Will Always Love You, also became a massive global hit, becoming the best-selling single of all time by a female solo artist of all time. The song also won her a Grammy for Record of the Year. She sang the national anthem at the Super Bowl in the previous year, which gives me goosebumps every time, and I'm not even American, but she did that. Her voice just, whoo, could just open up the gates of heaven. It's just the way she sang, man. Oh my days, so good, so good. I wish I could play the video, but YouTube would copyright claim me in 2.5 seconds. But anyway, she definitely had a lot of highs in that year, that's for sure. No pun intended. And she was just looking forward to starting her life with a new husband. However, bringing a baby into this world would prove difficult for the couple, as Whitney revealed in an interview with Barbara Walters that she had suffered 3 miscarriages, with one of the miscarriages happening during the filming of The Bodyguard. To add insult to injury, Bobby would also confess to Whitney that his baby mom and on and off ex-girlfriend Kim Ward was pregnant with another child, so you can only imagine how deeply that hurt Whitney. See what I mean? That marriage was kind of doomed from the start. Like, even though they really seemed to love one another, it was just a toxic situation from almost day one. But finally, sometime after the wedding, Whitney would find out that she was late again, and a baby was finally on the way. Bobbi Kristina Brown would finally arrive a year later in March of 1993. With Whitney being a huge star at the time, she had to work a lot and go on tour, so she refused to leave Bobbi Kristina behind and would take her on tour with her. But even with that, Whitney was pulled away from Bobbi Kristina because of a hectic schedule, leaving the poor child to yearn for a mother's attention.
You all know who this is, huh? Bobby, 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 my baby, my little girl. Oh, she inspires me, and she giving me joy, 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 joy. Her little girl does, and mommy loves you, girl. You don't have to worry about a thing because I'm standing right by your side. Don't worry, can you shoot?
Whitney continued to keep busy throughout the 90s, especially in Hollywood, going on to star in films such as Waiting to Exhale, The Preacher's Wife, and Cinderella. She would also release a 4th studio album, My Love Is Your Love, which was a global success, selling over 14 million copies. It generated several hit singles. When You Believe, which is a duet with Mariah Carey, absolute banger. The song even won an Academy Award for Best Original Song. Heartbreak Hotel, which features Kelly Price and Faith Evans, and It's Not Right But It's Okay, another banger. The title track, My Love Is Your Love, was certified platinum and became Whitney's 3rd best-selling single ever. As Whitney's superstardom continued to grow, Bobby's spotlight diminished by the minute. The media started referring to Whitney as Miss Houston as opposed to Mrs. Brown.
Can I just ask you real quick, Miss Houston?
Mrs. Brown, man.
Mrs. Houston Brown?
Yes, darling.
And though Bobby might not admit it, that does something to a man's ego. Bobby kind of became the guy in the background whenever they would go out. He was now the +1. Whitney though continued to make sure that she would push Bobby to the front at any chance she could. Once again, she loved that man. With all the cheating and beating allegations, the scandals, the arrests, she stuck by him no matter what. This was an issue for Robin, as she felt that Bobby was a bad influence towards Whitney, with Bobby thinking the same of Robin. This started a huge beef between the two. Robin also wasn't happy with Whitney's drug dependency. Whitney would decline Robin's and other families members' pleas to go to rehab. Bobby and Robin would constantly go at each other's heads over what's best for Whitney, and Whitney was just caught in the middle. That was until 2000, when Whitney was given an ultimatum by Robin. It was either her or Bobby, and Whitney chose Bobby, and with that, Robin resigned for her position and the two would no longer speak again. In August of 2001, Whitney signed one of the biggest record deals in music history with Arista and BMG. She renewed her contract for $100 million to release 6 new albums, for which she would also earn royalties. She later made an appearance at Michael Jackson's 30th anniversary special, where her extremely thin frame further spurred rumors of drug use. In a 2009 interview with Oprah Winfrey, Whitney acknowledged that the drug use had been the reason for her weight loss. She cancelled a second performance scheduled for the following night. In 2002, Whitney became embroiled in a legal battle with John Houston Enterprise, which is Whitney's father's management company. Although the company was started by her father to manage her career, it was actually ran by company president Kevin Skinner. Skinner filed a breach of contract lawsuit and sued for $100 million, stating that Whitney owed the company previously unpaid compensation for helping to negotiate the $100 million contract with Arista Records and for sorting out legal matters. Kevin Skinner later lost the case. Whether Whitney's father had anything to do with the lawsuit is not really clear. Whitney stated that her father had nothing to do with the lawsuit, although Skinner tried to claim otherwise. John Houston never appeared in court. Whitney's father later died in February of 2003. The lawsuit was dismissed on April 5th, 2004, and Skinner was awarded nothing. Also in 2002, Whitney gave an interview with Diane Sawyer to promote her then upcoming album, Just Whitney. During the primetime special, she spoke about her drug use and marriage, among other topics. She also addressed the ongoing rumors that she was abusing crack cocaine, where she said the famous "crack is whack" line.
First of all, let's get one thing straight. Crack is cheap. I make too much money to ever smoke crack. Let's get that straight, okay? We don't do crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack.
Whitney did, however, admit to using alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, and pills. She also acknowledged that her mother had urged her to seek help regarding her drug use. She also denied having an eating disorder. She further stated that Bobby Brown had never hit her, but acknowledged that she had hit him. See? Once again, she loved that man. Anyway, at this point, Whitney sort of became a singer that the media would make fun of because of her drug use, from SNL sketches to cartoons. I mean, it was horrible. People literally turned their back on Whitney and she became a tabloid favorite. Things also didn't help when in early 2004, Bobby Brown starred in his own reality TV show, Being Bobby Brown, on Bravo. The TV show provided a view of the domestic life in the Bobby Brown household, and Whitney was also a prominent figure throughout the show, receiving as much screen time as Bobby Brown himself. The series aired in 2005 and featured Whitney in unflattering moments. The Guardian, The Hollywood Reporter, amongst many other magazines and tabloids, slammed the show, saying that it made Whitney and Bobby look bad. The Hollywood Reporter even said that the show was undoubtedly the most disgusting series to ever ooze its way into television. Jeez. Despite the perceived train wreck nature of the show, the series gave Bravo its highest ratings in the time slot and continued Whitney's successful entries into film and television. The show, however, was not renewed for a second season after Whitney said that she would no longer appear in it, and Bobby Brown and Bravo could not come to an agreement for another season. Whitney gave her first interview in 7 years in September of 2009, appearing on the Oprah Winfrey season premiere. The interview was billed as the most anticipated music interview of the decade. Whitney admitted on the show to having used drugs with Bobby during their marriage. By that time, the two had divorced. She told Oprah that before The Bodyguard, her drug use was light, that she used drugs more heavily after the film's success and the birth of the daughter, and that by 1996, doing drugs was an everyday thing. She said, and I quote, "I wasn't happy by that point in time. I was losing myself," unquote. Whitney further stated that she had attended a 30-day rehabilitation program. Unfortunately, it would only work for a while, as Whitney returned to drug use shortly after. Her mother Sissy had to step in and obtain a court order and the assistance of law enforcement to press Whitney into receiving further drug treatment. Whitney released her new album, I Look to You, in August of 2009. The album's first two singles were the title track, I Look to You, and $1 Million Bill. The album entered the Billboard 200 at number 1, with Whitney's best opening week sales of 305,000 copies, marking Whitney's first number 1 album since The Bodyguard, and Whitney's first studio album to reach number 1 since 1987's Whitney. In January of 2010, Whitney was nominated for 2 NAACP Image Awards, one for Best Female Artist and one for Best Music Video. She won the award for Best Music Video for her single I Look to You. On January 16, she received the BET Honors Award for Entertainer, citing her lifetime achievements spanning over 25 years in the industry. After getting out of rehab, in September of 2011, The Hollywood Reporter announced that Whitney would produce and star alongside Jordan Sparks and Mike Epps in the remake of the 1976 film Sparkle. In the film, Whitney portrays Jordan Sparks' not-so-encouraging mother. Whitney is also credited as an executive producer of the film. Deborah Martin Chase, producer of Sparkle, stated that Whitney deserved the title considering she had been there from the beginning in 2001 when Whitney obtained Sparkle's production right. Whitney's remake of Sparkle was filmed in late 2011 over 2 months and would be her last film ever filmed. Whitney reportedly appeared disheveled and erratic in the days before her death. On February 9, 2012, Whitney visited singers Brandy and Monica together with Clive Davis at the rehearsals for Davis' pre-Grammy Awards party at the Beverly Hiltons in Beverly Hills. That same day, she made her last public performance when she joined Kelly Price on stage in Hollywood, California and sang Jesus Loves Me. It's interesting that Jesus Loves Me was the last song she would perform publicly before tragedy would struck. 2 days later, on February 11th, Whitney was found unconscious in Suite 434 at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, submerged in the bathtub. Beverly Hills paramedics arrived at about 3:30 p.m., found her unresponsive and performed CPR. Whitney Houston was sadly pronounced dead at 3:55 p.m. The cause of death was not immediately known. Local police said there were no obvious signs of criminal intent and labeled the death as an accidental drowning, with contributing factors of heart disease and cocaine use according to the 42-page coroner's report, though many people almost immediately suspected foul play. The Clive Davis pre-Grammy party that was happening at the same time Whitney died just upstairs was quickly turned into a tribute to Whitney. Clive Davis spoke about Whitney's death at the beginning of the party. I don't know about you guys, but it feels weird that this guy was giving this speech while Whitney's body was still in the building upstairs, a few floors up. Like, that's mad. The party should have never continued. It should have been shut down immediately as soon as they heard the news. Some celebrities even opposed Clive's decision to continue with the party while a police investigation was being conducted in Whitney's hotel room with her body still in the building. Shaka Khan said that the party should have been cancelled, saying, quote, "I thought that was complete insanity. And knowing Whitney, I don't believe that she would have said the show must go on. She's the kind of woman that would have said, stop everything, I'm not going to be there," unquote. Sharon Osbourne condemned the Clive Davis's party, declaring, quote, "I think it was disgraceful that the party went on. I don't want to be in a hotel room where there's someone you admire who's tragically lost their life 4 floors up. I'm not interested in being in that environment. And I think when you grieve someone, you do it privately. You do it with people who understand you. I thought that was wrong," unquote. An invitation-only memorial service was held for Whitney at her home church on the 18th of February 2012 at the New Hope Baptist Church, the church that she used to attend as a child and sang back in the day. Full circle moment right there. Among those who performed at the funeral were Stevie Wonder, CeCe Winans, Alicia Keys, Kim Burrell, and R. Kelly. Other attendees included Clive Davis, Kevin Costner, Ricky Minor, and music director Dionne Warwick, Ray J, and the ex-husband Bobby Brown. Whitney was buried on February 19th, 2012, next to her father, John Russell Houston. As I mentioned previously, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office reported that Whitney's death was caused by drowning and the effects of heart disease and cocaine use. The office said that the amount of cocaine found in Whitney's body indicated that she had used the substance shortly before her death. Whitney's untimely death sent shockwaves around the world, and no one could quite believe that America's sweetheart was gone. I remember that day. It was all over the news and my mom just couldn't believe it because we all liked Whitney Houston in my family, so it was a shock to all of us. Sadly, just 3 years later, on July 26, 2015, it seemed like history will repeat itself in the Houston household. Whitney's daughter, Whitney's only daughter, Bobby Christina, was found unconscious in the bathtub in her home, chillingly mirroring her mother's death. After being in a coma for nearly 6 months, her family decided to pull the plug and let her soul rest. Bobby Christina passed away at the very young age of just 22. Her cause of death was officially listed as pneumonia, though Whitney's fans and Bobby Brown himself believed that Bobby Christina's boyfriend was responsible for her death. I'm not even gonna mention his name because he ain't worthy. I hope this serves as a cautionary tale to my viewers that drugs is not the way. Forget the peer pressure, the fast life, and what the industry tells you to do. Just be true to yourself and don't be influenced by stuff or people you know are bad for you. Stick to your values and morals, always. So many singers still want to be just like Whitney Houston, with a pure talent, charisma, soulful voice, classy and timeless. She started off in the church in New Jersey, to becoming the world's best singer in my opinion. Her range as a vocalist and how effortless she made it all look has yet to be matched by other vocalists today. It was truly a huge loss that the world suffered on that fateful day in February of 2012. The Voice, Whitney Houston. Rest in peace. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. I'll catch you on the next one. It's your boy Drae Synes, over and out. Peace.